You're watching Co-op for Two, broadcasting live from Champaign, Illinois, Monday night, early Tuesday morning, 1 a.m., August 30th, 2022. And we're here to play turn 8 of the Murders by Mail, play-by-mail game called LA.Noire, Bloom of Hollywood, Hollywood in Bloom. I keep forgetting the actual which way that title works. If this is the first video in the series you're watching, you should stop now and go back and start at session 1, turn 1, and catch up. This will be about an hour. And we tend to spend 20 minutes or so at the beginning of these videos just catching up, but we've already done that on the Sherlock Holmes case we played 2 hours ago, so this one will be quick. We'll jump right into it after a brief discussion, but I did want to discuss a couple things that have come up in the hour between games. The first one was what we're going to do next this week. I talked about possibly playing another cold case game later this week. We had someone stop into the channel, Stacy, who asked if we were going to play the Cold Case Investigation Unit Case 2. And I said, well, we're either going to play that or this other, or try a different cold case game, Cold Case Crackers. But I think given that everyone was willing to try another game in this series, and we've got someone who wants to play it, we're going to make an executive decision now, and we're going to play Case 2 of the Cold Case Investigation Unit. And we'll play all three of them then, I think. I think we'll play all three of those cases, and then I'll do a review of them. Anna was saying she can't play in the middle of the week, but Friday, Saturday would work. So that's what we'll do. We'll either play Friday or Saturday Case 2 of the Cold Case Investigation Unit. That's it. That's settled. The only question is whether it's Friday or Saturday. Jonathan will tell us what day works for him, and we'll schedule it there, assuming Jonathan can make Friday or Saturday. Otherwise, we got a harder choice. And then we'll play Case 3 the next week, and we'll finish that series up. I'll review it, and then we'll jump to the Cold Case Crackers cases. Okay, that's the first thing. We've got a new person in the channel, Jonathan Jang or Yang. Great to see a new person here. This is a great video for people to join us for because these are so short. Now, one other thing. Jonathan also started a thread on the Board Game Geek Guild section for Co-op for Two, which you can find a link in the YouTube community tab, where we discuss what games to play next and various other things. And we've been talking about doing something a little special over Halloween. We've had some fun during holidays, sort of doing little mini marathons. And so I think we should try to aim for a little horror-themed mystery games around Halloween. And Jonathan was suggesting maybe try one of the cases from the Deadbolt Mystery Society, which are these prop-based mystery suspect games. Those prop games are not typically my very favorite, but they are fun for doing on a special occasion. So if you visit that Co-op for Two Guild page on Board Game Geek, and help us decide which games to play, how many. I don't know, maybe we'll try to play 2 or 3 around Halloween. You can help us decide which to play. Jonathan says, tried Cold Case Investigators, didn't really like the one I did. Cold Case Crackers I didn't like. Haven't tried Cold Case Investigation Unit. Yeah, Cold Case Crackers, I don't know anything about. The Cold Case Investigation Unit, which we played last week, was a very mixed bag. Although I would say it exceeded my expectations, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I've corresponded briefly with the author of that since then, and maybe she'll stop by and say hello. All right, anything else to talk about before we get in? I did want to mention one thing that I think we're going, after we finish these murder by mail, these play by mail cases, we're going to have a long discussion about the pros and cons of them. But one of the really giant pros of this is it really is enjoyable to be able to look through the previous clues we've read in chronological order, right? Like in this case, for example, here are the first 6 sets of replies, and being able to say, oh, I remember we were told about that, and just be able to quickly go to it and mark it up, that is a very different experience from playing something like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, when we have to rely on our notes or have a difficult time of locating paragraphs we've read in the past and not being able to sort them chronologically. The mind is very good about ordering things chronologically. So being able to say, I think I saw that somewhere, and go back to it, be able to go back to it based on time, is a big deal. And it really makes for a different experience to be able to so easily go back and reread clues. Jonathan says, I actually got the Murders by Mail Sherlock Holmes case, and so I haven't been following that one. Okay, good. Well, it would be interesting to watch it after you play it. There's one more case in the Murders by Mail series, and it's described as sort of a cozy Victorian cottage murder mysteries. So I thought that would probably be the least likely for us to enjoy. So I've skipped that one, and maybe 2 at a time is already pushing it. All right, let's get back into this case and remind ourselves where we left off. We actually, for quite a while, we've been feeling like we understand what's happened here. The sister is poisoning her and then killed her. But we've been trying to find the sister's Mexican boyfriend, Julio, and we thought we came up with a very clever way to find him. Jonathan realized we could go find one of the performers at her club, but that didn't work. However, we kind of seems like we may have cracked this case wide open with the last set of clues we read, and let's take a look at those before we start. So on the last turn, we looked at the cabs, and he said, well, you might want to check Interurban Coach. They ferry the stars around. So that's one of the places I think we went. And then we talked to the mother, hoping she would give us information on the sister's ex-husband, and maybe we could find a current boyfriend that way. That didn't really work, although he did mention the boyfriend of Violet, who was killed, as someone who died in the war. A little unusual. But then here was our real breakthrough here. We went to the newspaper that wrote this story, and he says, we ask him if there's anything you left out of the story. I perched my hip on his desk. Come on, Eli, you're a sharp fellow. There must be something interesting that didn't make the cut. For old time's sake, there's Naomi. She's the charmer. And he says, well, maybe for new time's sake. She says, maybe. He says, okay. We did drop one line from the article. The last person to see her alive was a delivery boy from Stoddard's around 8 last night. Sounds like she ordered in about once a week. Now that is huge for 2 reasons. One, we think this might be Julio, which would be a huge lead. But also, it's so perfect because she's getting food delivered every week. That's the perfect place to be poisoning her every week. So if Julio is the delivery guy, this is not only finding Julio, but finding how she's being delivered the poison. If that's Julio, I think it's like cut and dried this entire case. So let's open this reply and see if in fact we've figured out where Julio is and how she's being poisoned and all that, because this could be the whole case wrapped up right here and now. Although whether we'll try to drag it on is a different question. Okay, so we sent Bill McKnight there to the Stoddards because he doesn't mess around. He's got a gun if Julio wants to get violent with us, but also he's good at detecting lies. So he's the perfect person for that. We sent Naomi the Charmer to the drivers for the Stars company. I'm not sure why we didn't. Why did we not reverse this? We should have reversed this. That seems like a poor choice. Shouldn't Naomi have gone to the ADA and Bev gone to the drivers? That sounds like a bad choice on our part. I remember that what happened was we picked these two places, then for the fun of it, we sent Bev to the ADA because he's gonna look down upon her, and she'll give him a hard time. But it seems like we should have reversed these. Okay. Let's start with Bev. Went to E52 like you asked. A well-dressed woman with ash blonde hair, worn long with bumper bangs, answers the door. What are bumper bangs? That sounds like something I would like. What are bumper bangs? I always found bangs very attractive. I've mentioned the girl I had a crush on in high school, Bianca Fuchsman. I think she had some good bangs. What are bumper bangs, though? Can someone look that up and tell us? She says, yes. Miss Kenner, my name's Beverly Parker. I'm working with Detective... She raises her hand to cut me off. Carl's at the office, I'm afraid. You can... I'm not a police detective, ma'am. Private. I came to talk to you. Her eyes cool and she sighs. I see. Well, come in then. She ushers me to the living room and indicates a chair. She sits at the end of the sofa. What's this about? I swear the room's getting colder by the second. I hate to be indelicate, but I should tell you up front, if Carl's having an affair, I couldn't care less. This is Carl's wife. We know the affair he had with Violet almost broke up his marriage in the beginning. Now she says, I couldn't care less. I believe her. There's steel in her voice. You couldn't? She lights a cigarette and blows a plume of smoke over her shoulder. Carl and I have an understanding, she says. After he had his little fling with that actress, and they got caught. You mean when he beat the daylights out of that shutterbug? Oh, please, she waves her hand dismissively. Carl's a terror in the courtroom, but outside he's only a paper tiger. He broke the man's camera, that's all. The rest is a publicity stunt ginned up by the photographer. Jeffcoat and the Herald Express. No charges were ever filed, but after it happened, Carl came clean. We had a very serious talk and made plans for our future. Future, I say, and it clicks. You mean kids? She gives an icy smile. No, Miss Parker. Divorce. I've agreed to wait until he's promoted to chief prosecutor, but after that we'll go our separate ways. His lawyer, my lawyer, has the paperwork signed and ready to go. Then he'll have his future and I'll have mine. She shows me out and I stand on the sidewalk a couple of minutes to warm up. Okay, so this woman's a cold character. Cold as a cucumber. They're getting divorced. Okay, so what are we told? We're told if we wanted to follow this lead down, she gives us the name of the photographer he supposedly beat up, who took a picture of this ADA Kenner having an affair with Violet. She says no, though the newspaper just reported it as him beating up the photographer. Really, he didn't. He just broke a camera. He's really not violent at all. So if we wanted to chase down that lead, we could by going to the Herald Express. We don't have any thoughts that this guy's involved, though, so it seems like no big deal at all. So just we knew this lead was not going to go anywhere. But I suppose for the record, let's write it down. This is number 7. And we're just going to make our notes officially that E52 Bev, maybe that's why we sent Bev here, because we knew she wasn't talking to the ADA, but the ADA's wife. So she tells us Jeff Coate, the photographer from Herald Express. Okay, we knew this was a throwaway lead. We just didn't have any place really better to go. All right, next, we could look up Jeff Coate in the directory just to follow our rule from the other case. Good, thank you, Jonathan. What Jonathan is referring to is in the previous session earlier this evening, we berated ourselves for not looking up early someone in the directory when we got their name. And we said the rule should be when you hear about someone, you should look them up in the directory. So, in fact, we do have some Jeff Coates. This is a Jeff Coate. So if we look up Jeff Coate in the paper, we actually have 2 here. So E47 or E83. 3. Or even if it's spelled differently, North 68. We don't think this guy's of any use to us. In fact, if we wanted to find him, we'd probably want to go to the Herald Express, which I could, in fact, look up as well. But it's useful to have their addresses. It reminds us, it makes us easier for us to see when there's a place we haven't gone. And it helps to know what houses are near where. If we get an address that's right next door, then it's nice to have it written down. So W84 is the Herald Express location. And that may even be one of our informant locations. Let's just see, is the Herald Express in our informants? No, it's not. Okay, unlikely to be relevant for our case, but good to follow our rule and write it down. All right, next up, remember, if you ever lose motivation, there's our victim, Violet. That's who we're trying to get justice for. All right, no one has looked up bumper bangs yet. All right, so let's start with Naomi. Let's save Will to the end. So Naomi went to Interurban Express or Interurban whatever, bus, whatever they are, the people who carry around the stars of Hollywood. Will, I'm not as much of a car aficionado as Bev. This is the reminder that you should have sent Bev, right? This is a little comment. You should have sent Bev to this location. But I have to say, the Interurban coach lot is impressive. Row after row of shiny new black cars, ready and waiting at Hollywood's beck and call. Inside the small office, a stout gentleman in a suit rose from his desk. There's 4 desks, but since it's lunch, he's the only one there. Perfect. Need help, miss? I do. I gave him the best sorry for bad news smile. My name's Edie Spears with Champion Studios. Oh, she's lying, pretending she's one of the people at Champion Studios. I'm here to pick up some papers. I believe they already called. He looked blank, glanced around the room. No. Nobody told me, at least. I frowned. Oh dear. It was supposed to be ready. We need a list of the drivers you have assigned to the champion account. I said, names, addresses, and phone numbers. Studio's renewing insurance policies for our contract players, and they're demanding additional information for chauffeur services. So maybe it was good to send Naomi because she is very clever and she's come up with a ruse of why she's going to get them to tell us their entire list of people and drivers and stars that use their services. Wow, that's pretty good. A sour look crossed his face at the mention of insurance. Ah, geez, what for? We're all bonded and insured here, and we use a lot of drivers. It'll take a while to copy all that down. Yeah, insured for your cars, yeah, I sighed, but not our actors. I tried to sound sympathetic. Perhaps we don't need information for every driver you use, just the ones who normally drive for Champion. I know I've seen Joe Stanton with the same driver several times. Sure, Archie Bingle. Good guy. He's Stanton's regular pickup. He evaluates the cabinets again. Yeah, it'd sure be easier. Couple dozen names instead of 100. Cue my relieved smile. Wonderful. I do have a few other stops to make. Could I come back in, say, an hour? Yes, ma'am, he said, plucking a legal pad off his desk. I'll get right on it. I don't get it. What's happened? Jonathan says bumper bangs are the bangs associated with Betty Page. This would be a nice time to bring up a little picture of Betty Page here. There's Betty Page. So, are these our bumper bangs? All right, what's happened at this clue? I'm confused. I do have a few other stops to make. Could I come back in, say, an hour, it says. And he says, yes, ma'am. I'll get right on it. So I see a couple of options. Either they want us to come back here, which I thought the game said you never go back to a place. Or is this game finally going to do something that we requested it do in the future, which is it going to send us information on its own? What do you think this is all about? Or is that it? Or is it done? Clearly it's not done, because we already knew. Okay, maybe not. Maybe this is it. This is the end of this clue. We're not going to get any information about it. But maybe the point is that the information we're being given here of interest is the name of Stanton's driver, which we happen to already know. Yeah, Anna's saying what I'm saying here. I think you're right. Anna says, no, I think they just gave us the one info about Joe's driver. Yeah, so she's gone. She got the information she needed and she's left. But we happen to already have this information. So this is a little unsatisfying because we were hoping there would be additional driver information. Maybe that about Violet's driving. So this is a little bit of a missed clue for us. We want Naomi to say, hey, can you look up any records you have for Violet or Poppy, the sister? And instead, this clue is telling us as if, hey, here's the good information you just extracted about Archie Bingle. But maybe you can't blame Naomi. She doesn't know if we already knew about Archie Bingle. Although I think she does, because she was the one, I think, who found it. But okay, we already know about Archie Bingle. In fact, we already talked to Archie Bingle. All right, so this was useless. Now let's go to the clue that may crack this whole case open. Stoddard's restaurant. Stoddard's an odd duck of a place. One side's a classic countertop diner, the other's a sit-down joint that's several notches nicer. They're open 24 hours and they deliver, which makes them pretty popular. I arrived mid-morning, took a seat at the counter and ordered breakfast. I struck up a little conversation with the waitress, Gwen. By the time I'd eaten and she'd cleared my plates, I'd learned quite a bit about how things worked around there. By her reckoning, a full third of their business was delivery, and they'd go 5 miles out, so they delivered to a huge chunk of Hollywood. One whole wall was filled with movie star headshots. Every other place in town had the same gimmick, and I asked if they ever delivered to anyone famous. Oh, sure. Delivery fellas take lots of stuff up into the hills. Actors gotta eat, too. Any good stories? I leaned in, conspiring. You know, crazy Hollywood stuff. She smiled. Conks, that's Dean Conkle, told me he delivered to Cary Grant one time, middle of the day, and he answered the door in a tux. And Julio, he said he's had women come to the door in their underthings, sometimes less. Julio? Yeah, Ramirez. I don't know if he's telling the truth, but he's a handsome guy, so maybe. Are those your only two drivers? Conks and Julio? Usually. Mitch Kester comes in on weekends when it's extra busy, but mostly it's those two. Why? No reason, I said, lighting a smoke. All that celebrity stuff is fascinating is all. I bet those guys have some great stories. So yeah, bingo is right. Julio Ramirez says sometimes the women come to a door in their underthings or less. And Conks met Cary Grant in the middle of the day in a tux. All right, but we've now got our delivery guy is Julio. So that's it. I mean, the case is really cut and dried, and we found Julio. So H22, turn 8, Stoddard's, Julio. We finally got his last name, Ramirez. Delivery driver. So now we know pretty sure that he's been delivering to Violet and he's been poisoning her food with that, which is going to be the sister's plan to kill her. And now let's find out where Julio lives. But as Anna said, we're basically done. I believe we're basically done. Although, let's talk about it in a second. Let's find Ramirez, though. Ramirez, Julio, S27. All right, there's Julio. Now, regarding us being done, John says, we got to follow the rule and get addresses for Conks and Kester as well. All right, Jonathan's right. Conks, Dean Conkle, other drivers, other delivery drivers. Thank you, Jonathan, for reminding me. Dean Conkle. Doesn't mean we have to visit them, but it does mean we got to look them up. After all, they might know some details about Ramirez. If he won't talk to us, his coworkers might say, oh yeah, he did deliver, like if he denies something. So I mean, it makes sense that maybe our suspect is not going to be honest with us, but his fellow workers might. So it's not crazy that we would talk to them to get information. So Dean Conkle is M56. And Mitch Kester is S53. Good. Okay. We could send all our detectives to follow up these 3 delivery leads. Yes, we could. Absolutely. All right. So I want to address one more thing about Anna saying we're basically done. I mean, it is true. We know, I think we know who did it and how. We've got a pretty good motive. We think Poppy killed her sister because she was ambitious and a mean person. But that's pretty dramatic to go kill off your sister. So it's possible that we've got a little bit more background to figure out about Poppy in terms of her motive. And you might also say, if you were the cops going to prosecute, you might say, well, I need a little more evidence. Like, I think we know, but we don't have all the evidence that we could have, maybe. All right. But boy, that was huge that we found Julio. Okay, so in deciding what to do, we know one thing, right? We know we're going to send Bill McKnight to talk to Julio. Right? So we can put that in right away. So S27. S27 is Julio Ramirez. All right, now, as far as Naomi and Bev, let's look at our notes and see if there was anywhere else that we wanted to go. We could visit the photographer who got beat up by who didn't get beat up by the DA. We don't care about them. We went to Carl Kenner. We don't need to go to the Mexican newspaper anymore for sure, but we've got 2 clubs that are related to our case that probably have no evidence of that we're interested in. We went to Interurban Coach. We could go get our free hot dogs. Jonathan Jang or Yang says, concrete evidence of poisoning is probably a good thing for us to have as well. Not sure how to get this besides trying to take a shot in the dark at a chemist. It's not a chemist. Don't forget, we have a very good theory. In fact, it was one of our earliest breakthroughs in this case, noticing that Poppy's apartment building had a worker that was spraying insecticide, and realizing that the chemical that the Violet was poisoned with could be from this insecticide. So, but one of the places we could go is one of the pest insecticide pest control places if we wanted to get a clue about, if we wanted to get confirmation about that. But we're pretty sure that's where she's getting her chemicals, from her apartment building. In the newspaper, there were a couple things. There was the free hot dogs. We were kind of curious about going there just for fun. We've also got some side stories in the paper that we kept thinking we might be able to solve. Port of Los Angeles fires. Is there a fire department? No. There's the exterminators if we wanted to. We could see the exterminators near where Poppy lived. If we wanted to chase that down. I think she just stole the insecticide from her apartment building, so I'm not sure we'll ever be able to get direct evidence of that. Where did Poppy live? I ask because I wonder if the exterminator is nearby. S55 was Poppy, and S28 is the A1 pest control. So you might imagine, I think she just took the extermination stuff near her house. But if you were curious about visiting an exterminator, they might just at least be able to confirm that the same chemical was what was poisoning her. But here's where the sister lives, and the nearby exterminator is right here, right down the block. So maybe if you were keeping track of points of interest, we might write down, oh, that's unfortunate. If we were keeping track of points of interest, S28 is an exterminator near Poppy. Do we have the name of the worker spraying insecticide? I forget if we visited him. We don't have his name. We just saw him on the property and talked to him. He said he might have given us his name. We know he's the manager, but I'm not sure we actually tried to look him up in case he lived elsewhere. That's an interesting thing. Let's just see here. Was it on our first turn? Yeah. Poppy Fitzgibbon's home. Let's just look at this. Aldo Barasamian is the maintenance guy. We assumed he lived there, but let's look him up. I think we may not have looked him up, which is kind of crazy, since we assumed... I think we just assumed that he lived there. Barasamian, S55. Yeah, same place. So I'll just make a note here. Lives here. Same location. Okay, so you can't talk to him further because this is where he lives. All right, we don't have too many good points of interest for this case. I am sort of curious about this side case of the fires in the paper. We tried to look for some. We couldn't really find. We have the harbor master's office. There were two stories about fires. There was this one here, and then there was this one here. Firebugs set small blazes in 4 different downtown flop houses within an hour. So I kind of feel like since we've wrapped up our main case, it would be nice to wrap up these side cases. We've been threatening that we're going to go to this free hot dogs place. I don't know how else to find who's setting these fires, though, except maybe the police. Now, let's remind ourselves, if we're curious about places to go, that we've also got a bunch of allies that we haven't visited in this case. And let's see what those are. We haven't visited Malcolm Andrews, old friend from days on the force, good man to talk to about pressing police business. He might know about the firebug side story. Small-time crook, criminal lowlife, attorney at law, reporter for the Examiner, reporter for Daily Variety, and the clerk from the Hall of Records. So I am kind of curious if we're looking for a motive. Like, it was interesting that we were told about Violet's boyfriend who died in the war. I'm sort of like curious if maybe there's some backstory with the sister that we don't quite know that explains why she hates her sister so much. But we don't really have a good reason to go to these places yet. On the other hand, you know, going to the 4 delivery drivers, I'm not sure how important that is. What do you guys think? We know we're going to go to where Julio lives, but where do you want to go for the other 2 clues? Do you want to go to the other delivery drivers, or do you want to wait to go to them? Do you want to try to go to the free hot dogs? Hall of Records could be something on Poppy or Violet. We went to Champion Studios. I wonder if the sister took out life insurance. There's an Aetna life insurance company. I wonder if maybe on our list of things to consider, did Poppy take life insurance on Violet? Check life insurance companies. That would give us good more evidence against the sister. Fire Department Headquarters, look at that. There is an entry for Fire Department Headquarters, even though it's not in the Yellow Pages section. I'm inclined to send someone to the fire department since we've got this main case wrapped up. I'm sort of think maybe we should try to see if there's a side case here. Jonathan says maybe rereading the turn we visited Poppy might give us more info now. Well, we could visit the turn when we found Poppy. Let's see, where was she? Went to her mother. The mother tells us about George Lawrence. Died in the war. He even died in the war, yeah. Well, we visited Poppy. We went to her neighbors. They didn't see anything. When we visited Poppy, let's see. Let's just quickly scan over this. I headed up to the top floor and knocked on the door of her suite. A few moments later, Poppy opened the door, wearing a dressing robe over what appeared to be a satin nightgown. Immediately she frowned. I wasn't who she was expecting. Yes? Miss Fitzgibbon, my name's William Knight. I'm a private detective working for your mother, Rose. Could I speak to you? Shifted from confusion to irritation, wound up at exasperation. I suppose so, only for a moment. I'm expecting someone. She made no move to invite me inside. You say this is some business for mother? Yes, ma'am. She ordered me to look into your sister's death. I took off my hat. My condolences, of course. She dipped her head. Thank you. It truly was a shock. But why in the world would mother hire a detective? Surely the police are doing their best. Of course, I think your mother simply wanted to do something herself. Tell me, were you and your sister close? Poppy's expression slid into regret. Well, not as close as we could have been, or as close as mother might have liked, but we were more than 8 years apart, Mr. Knight. Not much in common, I'm afraid. Then, of course, she had such success. I peered past her into the richly appointed suite. Seems like you may be finding some of that yourself. Her smile then was the truly genuine emotion I think I'd seen. Oh well, she shook her head, playing at demure. It's funny how life works, isn't it? She then made a show of looking back to check the time. Really, I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Knight, but I need to get ready. Mr. Hutchinson from the studio will be here any moment. Turned my hat and she closed the door. It felt, quite oddly, like the curtain coming down at the end of a play. And then we talked to Hutchinson and he said, she's a bad person. He didn't like her either. All right, so I think I'd like to send someone to the fire department. Let's send Bev to the fire department. It's not related to our case, but since our case is seeming easy, I think we're going to have to give ourselves a little side case here. So M81 is the fire department headquarters. We'll see if the game tells us asks us why we're going there when we enter it in. Now, where do we want to send Naomi? We could send her to the life insurance company. We could send her to talk to one of the other delivery drivers who works the same shifts as Julio. I think we should probably do that. Jonathan Warner says, bumper bang definition from Best Life Online. Hair lifted off the forehead into a more rolled style. So there we go. It's not just straight down bangs. It's sort of rolled forward. There's Betty Page. So a little bit of a roll, not straight down. All right, so we could send Naomi to one of the other delivery drivers, which kind of makes sense because Julio may not tell us that he specifically requested to be the delivery guy for Poppy, but the other delivery driver who's on duty might. That does make sense to me. If this is our primary suspect, it makes sense that we should be trying to lock him down. And Naomi could probably get some good information. Jonathan Jang says, is our current working theory that Poppy killed Violet because she thought this could get her into the acting business or because she's terrible? I think our current working theory is that Poppy was jealous of and hated her sister. And Possibly that's enough of a reason for Poppy. But she may have also schemed this whole thing and knew that once she killed her sister, she could make her move to taking her place in roles. We don't think that the movie theater put her up to it. But it may just be just jealousy. But there may be some past history between the two sisters that we could stumble on, that we should look for. We should look for more evidence, but it may just be jealousy is good enough. But boy, you got to be really jealous of your sister to kill her. So it would be nice to find more of a discussion of their history. That's why I was thinking, well, maybe the ex-boyfriend was stolen from Poppy, stuff like that. So we might want to try to track down that. That would maybe suggest going to the records informant. But I think we send Naomi to the other clerk for now. That would be my suggestion. But it could also be for life insurance money. Don't forget, if you have someone you hate who's family, that puts you in a very good position to get life insurance on them and then kill them. Because no one's going to be suspicious that you have life insurance on them if they're family. You kill them, you get your revenge because you're jealous of them, you get lots of money. We might be able to find out from the scuttlebutt whether she has insurance, or we could just stop by the insurance company to find out if she has insurance. But I think we finally found Julio. I suggest we send Naomi to talk and charm the other delivery guy. So we've got 2 other delivery guys, but one guy doesn't work weekends, right? There's only 2 drivers. Usually, Mitch Kester comes in on weekends when it's extra busy. Mostly it's those 2. So I suggest we send Naomi to Dean Conkle. What do you think about that? Okay, M56. Dean Conkle. Starter delivery. Can you imagine you go to court and you say, I'm sure Poppy did it, and they say why, and you just say, well, she's just terrible. She's a terrible person. That's the basis of my suspicion. Terrible, terrible person. That's not very convincing. It would be better to have a little more alibi. All right. Let's put in our entries here. Oops. We want to move in the Noir of Hollywood case. Okay, so S27 is Bill McKnight going to find Julio, going to talk to Julio. Naomi is going to M56, the other delivery guy. And then Bev is going to M81, the fire department. Now, the game may now tell us, ask us why we're trying to go to the fire department. If it does, we'll have a choice to make. Let's just put these in and see what happens. Okay, that's kind of exciting that just happened. I'm going to talk about Jonathan Jang's comment in a question in a second. But That's exciting that the game didn't say, tell us why you want to go to M81. We've seen what happened when you put in a location that the game has no idea why you would want to go there. It says, hey, there's lots of reasons you might want to go to Q55. Tell us which one in particular. It's the game's way of saying we don't have the game's way of saying we don't have a response plan for this yet, but maybe we're going to pass this information you type onto the designer, and maybe you'll get a custom written thing that they'll add to the database. So us going to this fire department, I thought there was a good chance that the game was going to say, why are you trying to go there? The fact that it let us put it in suggests that maybe there is a little side story case that we may be able to solve, which is very cool. We're going to find out. Okay, now let's talk about Jonathan Jang's question. Is there any criteria from the web or the rules as to what we would need before we try to solve it? That's a fantastic question. The game gives you very little guidance on that, and let's talk about it. You can see that there is an envelope that says open when you're ready to solve it. And then you saw on the website, there's a button to click to try to solve it. So we don't know what's in this envelope. It may be that in here are questions, and then we go online to answer the questions. Let's read what the game tells us about when to solve it. It says, when you're ready to solve, refer to the mysterious sealed envelope in the back of the case file. It contains the questions you must answer correctly to complete the case. The accuracy of your answers will determine your final score. Visit the website and select Solve. So basically, it's like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. When we're ready to solve it, we open here with questions, and then we go to the website to answer those questions. And we don't know what these are. And does the game tell us how to think about what we should be trying to come up with? It says, you'll get your replies after you make a move. Have they eliminated a suspect, uncovered a terrible secret, found out one guy's totally lying? Every reply gets you closer to solving the case. That's it. And then it tells us the killer's trying to actively thwart our investigation. Choices can affect outcomes with legal, romantic, or even mortal consequences. We've never had romantic, legal, or mortal consequences. Okay, but it doesn't tell us, it doesn't give us any clue about what questions it's going to be asking. Although note that the game doesn't know when we've opened this envelope. So we could get to the end and say we're ready to solve it. Then we could open this envelope up that says the question is, who was the firebug? And then we could say, well, we didn't figure that out yet, and so we'll keep playing. So the game has no way of enforcing the idea that once we open these questions, we can't search around more. So we could let ourselves search around more. But I think we should... First of all, I'm willing to play this until the murderer escapes. Like, we have to worry about that if we want to win, to solve this case before the murderer escapes, since it says that could happen. But I'm up for us deciding how long we want to play this. Do we want to start going to the free hot dogs and just walking around town, visiting studios, visiting Philip Marlowe's office, and seeing what happens, seeing when the game website says, you've got 3 turns left, and then we're going to stop sending you mail. So I'm open to at least one of the 2 cases doing that, trying to see what happens if we try to break the case by not finishing it. But I don't know if this one is the one. This fire little side case has got me curious, though. Jonathan says, I definitely would like to nail down a motive besides she's terrible. I agree with you. I mean, jealous. I would like to uncover a better motive, though. It's interesting. We've noticed right in the beginning that that is it that it's Mother's Day? Yeah. So if you'll remember, we noticed quite earlier that it is Mother's Day. And there are all these little personals about people spending time with their mother. And I kind of get the impression that maybe what's going on here is that Poppy is very jealous of Violet's relationship with the mother, and this may be some anger at the mother that's tied up in this murdering of Poppy as well. And so we might ask ourselves if there's a way to track that down. We visited the mother and talked to the mother as much as we can. We don't really have much of Poppy's history, though. Maybe we could try to find... We know that Poppy was married and divorced. So it might be nice, maybe if we're putting on our list of places to go, it might be nice to remind ourselves, try to find Poppy's ex-husband, maybe civil records office, and because maybe he can give us Poppy history regarding a motive. Like maybe the ex-husband will be able to fill us in and tell us how Poppy constantly talked about how angry she was at her sister Violet, etc. I like that idea. And maybe she, remember, we thought she bashed her in the head after she died to disguise it. But maybe she bashed her in the head out of anger. It's an interesting idea. All right. I guess that's it. I guess we end the session here. I'll see you in about a week when we get our next replies. I think we did pretty well in this case. I'm curious to check out side cases now. Jonathan says it might also be worth checking the exterminator across the street. I agree with that. I agree with that. As far as tying up loose ends, we could see if she got the poison at her apartment or at that exterminator. I have a feeling that at the minimum, when we go there, it's going to have an entry that says, yes, that's what they use. That's the poison they used, the same poison that killed Violet. All right, anything else to say before we sign off on this session? Reminder, I'll see you on Friday or Saturday for another cold case game. Cold Case Investigation Unit Case 2. You can watch Case 1 on the channel. Jonathan said, we've said it multiple times, but it is interesting how much more sure we are on this case than on the Sherlock case. Yeah, we've been sure since like turn 3 that it's the sister. That's because we found she was poisoned, and then we noticed the extermination thing at Violet's house. That could be a clue you could overlook. But yeah, we had a theory early on, and it just kept getting confirmed. All right. Well, let's sign off, and I'll see you guys next week.